Let me start by asking you, how did you come to live here? Did you grow up here? Study here? Did you hook up in London with someone who turned out to come from a place called Palmerston North? How many of you heard what a vibrant city it was, and that's what made you come to live here, so you could be part of that story? I'm interested in how cities can harness creativity to tell those kind of stories, how cities change and transform and tell new narratives about themselves. I'm going to start with my hometown, Whanganui, because that's the story I know. In 2021, Whanganui was declared a UNESCO City of Design, the only city in New Zealand to receive that award, to be awarded that title, and joining a network of like-minded cities around the world. But Whanganui is not the only city in that wider Creative Cities network. Auckland's a city of music, Wellington's a city of film, and Dunedin's a city of literature. And when I say that to you, you probably have quite an instant reaction to what that means. I say Wellington City of Film, and you're probably thinking about Peter Jackson, James Cameron, and Weta Workshop. But design is a large net. It means different things to different people. I say City of Design to you, and what are you thinking? Maybe you're thinking about product design, a cup, a helmet, a squishmallow. Or you're thinking about communication design, a wedding invitation, a poster to start a revolution. But much of design is invisible or unnoticed. It's the cycleway you travel to work on every morning. It's the system of pipes underneath us right now that keep our toilets flushing. Everything that makes up your city has been designed by someone with a particular outcome in mind. Design is the creative solution to a problem, and good design is when the end user is satisfied. For Whanganui, being a city of design talks about a history of 800 years of Māori design innovation, about early aspirations and urban development, about how at the turn of last century, the city was a hub for the arts and crafts movement, and by the second half of that century, a hotbed for domestic modernism. It talks about all the manufacturers on Heads Road exporting globally, and the artists who are exceptional. But design thinking has changed and grown over the years. Globally, how we understand design has expanded. To give another Whanganui example, in 2017, the Whanganui Awa achieved legal personhood. A global first, which means that all future development and management of the river must be done in co-design with iwi. The new port, Te Puaha, shows what's possible when Indigenous knowledge is foregrounded. But that kind of relationship design is intangible, it's complex. It's a world away from making a squishmallow. But the through line for all of these stories is design. From the fishing weirs up the river 200 years ago, to the helmet a London bobby wore on the beat last night, made on Heads Road. For each of those objects, events, happenings, a problem was solved creatively. The task of a city of design is to capture all of those stories, the formal ones and the informal ones, and in particular, to seek out and celebrate those unseen design heroes who seek to make their corner of the world beautiful and effective, and every city has those heroes. Let's time travel now back to 2014, when economist Shamobel Jacob coined the phrase zombie towns to refer to the process of emptying out of smaller regional centres as traditional models of employment were shrinking. Regions like Northland and Whanganui, he said, were shrinking both by population and economy, and he argued had already passed a tipping point on the way to becoming zombie towns. Now, I'm not sure if I need to make this clear, but becoming a zombie town is not good. What he meant by zombie towns were places where there was no hope for prosperity or growth. And he said New Zealand needed to have a really difficult conversation about the future of those places. Well, there was complexity and nuance, actually, in Equab's proposition, but that got washed away by the power of the clickbait of zombie towns. And Whanganui was the eponymous zombie town. It was the OG. The tagline went viral, and it stuck, and it hurt. Can you imagine what it's like to live in a community where you're told that's your future? And it's true that by 2014, Whanganui had seen some hard times. It had been hit hard by the loss of industries such as rail, shipping, the woolen industry, but it was already undergoing a transformation, fueled by a new interest in its own heritage and in the potential of creative thinking. I was interested in Whanganui and zombie towns because in late 2015, my partner was offered a job in Whanganui. We were keen to get out of the big city, and we had quite a romantic vision of Whanganui, which was based largely on a 2-day mini break there where we'd walked around the CBD and looked at old buildings and fantasized about buying them and making something new. To be honest, that's pretty much what all our holidays look like. Because we're not totally reckless, we decided to take a trip to the city before he signed the contract. It was Friday at lunchtime when we drove down the main street. And I won't lie to you, there wasn't a single person walking down that street, not even a zombie. Started to think we might be making a mistake. But Instagram told me a new design museum had opened up round the corner, so we decided to check it out. This is Rick Rudd. He's a potter who specialises in teapots. And not long before that visit, he'd sold a beautiful beachside villa to buy a brutalist building in the CBD and set up his own museum. Court's Museum of Studio Ceramics is the largest and most significant collection of New Zealand studio ceramics in the world. And the museum is run almost entirely, nearly, single-handedly by Rick himself. He's the visitor host, he's the exhibition curator, he's the technician, and the live-in caretaker. That visit to Courts showed me that the city was possible of pioneering a kind of gritty DIY entrepreneurship that was full of heart. It's the audacity that sees someone decide to set up a national museum, not in Auckland or Wellington, but in a population of less than 50,000 people. I mean, real estate is a factor, of course. In a classic gentrification cycle, Whanganui had bottomed out of the market. That meant two things were possible. Firstly, creative workers started to move to town from Auckland and Wellington to buy a house and have a better life. Investors bought up old buildings to repurpose for culture in ways unthinkable in a bigger city or a hotter market. But it's not just property that changes cities. It's the permeability of culture. When the culture of a city is open enough, loose enough, that grassroots actions can become mainstream. If a city isn't too rigid in its hierarchy and its policies, then individuals can become leaders. As writer Jane Jacobs once said, cities perform better when everybody can contribute. Meet Anthony Tonnen, musician, winner of the prestigious Tate Music Prize, and Whanganui's most fervent public transport advocate. Anthony runs the Jury Hill elevator, and if you never caught the elevator, I can only describe it as a crucial, if deeply strange, part of the public transport network. He's also a major player in our new high-frequency bus network. Anthony's redesigning the city, not as a government or a council employee, but as a musician who just wants to catch the bus. Anthony says he's interested in artists using creative thinking to get inside the pipes of government and shake things out. But individuals operate within larger frameworks of ancestors and descendants, the people who have come before us and the people who are yet to come. This building could be labelled a static collection of materials and engineering, but it's so much more than that. It's a projection of post-colonial ambition. It's a physical archive of new and old materials that come together to carry the past into our future. This is Cecilia Kumaro, artist and designer, who's dedicated her life into ensuring that the visual language of her tupuna are carried into customary use in our city. Cecilia led an artist group called Te Kāhui Toi, working with architects Warren and Marnie, to reimagine the 100-year-old Sargent Gallery, to recreate it as a new space that frames the river, visually embodying the concept from the mountains to the sea, from Ruapehu to Long Beach. The new building, Te Ware o Rehua, shows a changing city, one where our histories are literally embedded into bricks and mortar. And here's Minnie Baragwanath, a legally blind activist who works tirelessly to make the world as accessible as it can be. Imagine being blind in a world that's almost completely designed for people who can see. Last year, Minnie relocated her influential global centre of possibility from Auckland to Whanganui to not only embark on the task of making the city the most accessible in Aotearoa, but to create a platform for design entrepreneurs, where design entrepreneurs could design products for a disability community of close to 2 billion people with a spending power of US 13 trillion. She doesn't start small. Being recognised as a city of design isn't the end of the story. It's the platform from which stories like this can be told. Cities around the world come together, they meet, they talk, they share their successes and their failures, and they learn from each other. Some of those cities are your classic design superstars. It's Helsinki, Bilbao, Shanghai. But many of those cities are also in a state of transition, moving from old models of production to new ways of being. Geelong, for example, from the wool industry to clean tech. Detroit, from car manufacturing. Wuhan, well, I think if there was ever a city in need of changing its global narrative, it's Wuhan, right? Known by most of us since 2020 for one reason only, but in fact a global leader in engineering design and urban development. The thread that connects all of those cities in times of transition is creativity. Funnily enough, Shamabeel Jacob came to Whanganui in 2016 to good-humouredly face the music. What he said when he came there was that small regional centres needed to look to connectivity. He said they should look outside the geographic borders and traditional pecking orders. Smaller cities should not seek to make their way up the food chain in their own country, but look outward, look laterally, and seek out like-minded businesses and cities around the world. He also said that Whanganui needed to learn to tell its own story to itself and then to the world. As for me, a few years after that walk around this city looking at old buildings, my partner and I bought the abandoned former civic centre of Gonville, once a borough in its own right, now a suburb of Whanganui. It came with the old and derelict swimming baths, an old town hall, and the fire station. We wanted in our own way to contribute to the transformation of our city. Like the city itself, it's a work in progress, but it currently houses 2 homes, holiday accommodation, a research centre, a ballroom dancing school, and a microbrewery. Design isn't an abstract concept or an academic pursuit. It's the intentional act of making change. Innovation in products, developments in the built environment, changes in people's lives. If my town ever was in a zombie coma, it's well and truly awake now, wakened by the passion and commitment of individuals like Minnie, like Cecilia, like Anthony. Those are some of my design heroes, but my question to you is, who are your design heroes? Who are the people who are shaping and changing your cities? Cities can transform their story and make it unique by harnessing and working in partnership with creatives, giving them a voice and a platform. Quite simply, they can become better by design.